almost anything. Predictably, my name is Nelda Schulte, and I'm joined today by Gil Donkersgood, who is my former partner in crime when we ran Calgary Dwelling Consultants. And I'm joined by my very special guest, Donald Gray from Edmonton Eviction Service. Welcome, Donald, and welcome, Gil.
Thank you.
So, my online business, I switched my business to an online business, which is neldaschulte.com, and it helps property investors and landlords build a profitable do-it-yourself business with reasonably priced and free-priced products, including my book, Canadian Landlord's Handbook. I also offer coaching and free courses and free resources. And I host these programs with subject matter experts because when I started, I stepped in a lot of financial and emotional landmines. And I want to help landlords and property investors bypass those landmines altogether. Because there are a lot of things that can go wrong in real estate, and they all have very expensive repercussions. So, to that end, part of the support that I provide is bringing in subject matter experts like Donald Gray and Gil Donkersgood. And tonight's topic is how to navigate the Residential Tenancy Dispute Resolution Service, which is the acronym is RTDRS, with tenant evictions. So, if you have a tenant that you want to evict, how do you do it? And our expert is Donald Gray of Edmonton Eviction Services. So welcome again, Don. Don has a PowerPoint presentation that he's going to walk us through so that we can see the visuals. He can tell us all about the steps. And Gil and I will be asking him some questions throughout. So go right ahead, Donald. Tell us how the eviction process works and what are the two main reasons for eviction?
Well, yeah, here we go. Eviction process. I call it a how-to guide for those brave souls willing to risk their sanity. It's simple. The guy's gone. But is it really that simple? This is you break it into two. I'm gonna say three basically. The main one is, or the most common, is the non-payment of rent. That's our biggest culprit. I mean, sometimes there's other things to go with that. There may be some interference, or maybe they don't keep the place in a reasonably clean condition, or any of those. Now, all of this falls under Section 21 of the Residential Tenancy Act, or RTA, and the third one, I'm going to say the first one is non-payment of rent, and then there's that group in the middle of various items that are breaches. And then the last one is overholding. That's on a fixed term, when you have a fixed term lease and the tenant decides they don't want to leave. They like it there too much, and you don't want them anymore for whatever reason, and they don't want to leave. So that's special for them. Where's my?
So I just want to backtrack just a little bit. Can tenants contest an eviction for non-payment of rent?
No, that's the only thing they can't contest. All the rest they can say, no, I didn't interfere, or I didn't. It's in perfectly good condition. It's clean. I didn't do any damages, or I didn't really overhold. The lease is wrong, or something. But if you owe money, you can't contest that.
So that's the one reason you can't contest if you're evicting a tenant for non-payment of rent.
Yeah, and that's when you, on a 14-day notice, or 48-hour, 24-hour notice, that the 24 hours for if there's violence involved, the 48-hour notice is for non-registered residents or tenants that move in either with the current tenant, or sometimes they see that your place is empty and they move in. That's what the 48-hour notice is for. And then the 14-day notice is the one that surrounds Section 21. And they can write a letter of objection to that 14-day notice, and it null and voids the notice. It doesn't, in my mind, it doesn't really matter because the 14-day notice isn't enforceable, meaning that you can't hire a bailiff to remove the tenants. I mean, you and I can't touch them. A bailiff can, but the bailiff won't go in unless it's a court order.
Okay.
And, a 14-day notice is just a little poke in the side saying, hey, we don't like what you're doing.
Okay, just this picture in the middle is, did somebody put a pool, one of those
inflatable pool in the garage.
In the garage? Oh, that's the garage. I thought it was in the living room.
Well, yeah, I don't think it's in the living room. No, there's garbage can and stuff back there. Yeah, no, it's garage.
And by the way, when I'm looking at Fluffy the cat and the toilet bowl, I was telling Dawn yesterday I had a similar experience. I do allow pets in one of my properties, and the tenants downstairs told me that the tenants upstairs had cats, and so I emailed them and asked them. They, oh no, we don't have cats. And so then I had someone come in and do a property maintenance inspection because it's in a different city than where I live. No evidence of cats. The next day, I get a picture on my text showing a view of the kitchen and the dining room window where there are cats sitting on the ledges. So anyway, I just sent her the picture and said, okay, you have to pay the pet deposit. Because
I'm guessing that tenant, his name is Schrodinger.
Yeah. So I don't know where they hid the cats, because when the person did the property maintenance inspection, I said, was there any evidence of cats, kitty litter, smell of cat? No, she couldn't find anything. So I'm like, where did they hide the cats? So when I saw Dawn's cartoon, I'm like, aha, that's where they were.
I do like it.
Yeah. I like the one on the right there.
Yeah, let's get out of here. Just bit the landlord.
Yeah, gotta go. So what's the process? Here's the process. We'll go through each one as we go. So I'll go through this kind of quickly. You gotta have proof. So you gotta gather your proof, your documents, and then there's 3 different courts. We'll go through that. Assemble the notice of hearing packages. So we have to give the other side, or in our case, the tenants, what we have. So it's all, there's no surprises. Everybody gets it. It's everything knows the same. Of course, it's sometimes it's buried in what you're sending to them, and they got to figure it out. They do that to us, certainly. And so you got to put together the package that you're going to serve to them, and you serve the notice to them. Then afterwards, you got to prove to the court that you did that. So you complete a declaration and file. If it's in the upper 2 courts, you got to do affidavit rather than a declaration. You attend the hearing, and they get the court order and the judgment. You file it, and then you serve the tenants with the filed copy, the official copy. And then if they don't leave, you got to hire a bailiff. So let's explore that a little bit here. So gathering the documents required, the things you need. You should have a lease agreement. I've had plenty over the years that they didn't. It was all a handshake, and we were able to proceed as long as there was rent paid at one time. That shows that there was a landlord-tenant agreement. We can prove that they paid rent. We need a tenant ledger, sometimes known as a rent roll. Most landlords don't have that, especially if they only got 1 or 2 or 3 units. It doesn't make sense to them to be recording everything. It's all in there. They put it in the bank, so they may have a separate account, and so everything's there, and that's fine. The court likes to have that shows what was paid and when. We need to know the late payment, late payment is equally as onerous as non-payment. So through the tenant ledger, you're going to be able to show that they were late. Any notices, that sort of thing, anything that written, we can use as evidence. Even neighbors upset or whatever, if you're going for interference, that type of thing. Emails, text, anything written, pictures, audio or video. When there's damages or there's somebody that's really obnoxious, and you can capture it on audio or video, and any kind of expert reports if that's required. I've got one now on the books where this fellow is setting up a gym on the second floor of a wooden structure, and the fear is that it's not strong enough, and
So is that an apartment building or a house?
apartment building.
Oh, so it's one of those old wood frame apartments like built in the 50s or something, and
Yeah, it's at least 50 years old. This apartment building, and of course the standards back then are different than today. So we're getting some structural engineer people to go through and make a report for us. So that's going to be essential in proving that this tenant shouldn't stay there, or at least should remove all his stuff.
move his 300 pounds of weights, 500
Oh,
pounds of
more
weights.
than that. A lot
Wow.
more than that. Yeah.
Wow.
There's one machine is over 600 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. They did the landlord went in and took pictures of the equipment, or some of the equipment anyway, and got the makes, and they was able to go to online and find that. And then they actually went to a store and talked to salesman that sells that stuff, and or sales lady, and got the weights and everything. So yeah, that
Wow.
one machine is over 600 pounds by itself, never mind him on it. He's 250 or so, and so yeah, they're really concerned, and he's telling them to screw off. So
Yeah.
anyway, court of choice. We use RTDRS. It only deals with the Residential Tenancy Act and the Mobile Home Act, so it's very specialized. It was created in 2007 to streamline the process. There was a big backlog in the other courts, provincial and Queen's Bench at that point, Queen's Bench, and it was taking months to get a hearing. And they're a lot more expensive than the RTDRS here. So the RTDRS not only was to reduce that backlog, but it was to make it more affordable for everybody, including landlords and tenants, to be able to bring their problems to justice, so to speak.
It's quicker in Alberta though now, isn't it? Like you were telling me that it was in a previous conversation that you get hearings in as quick as 8 days now. Is it?
Yeah, right now. Yesterday, the ones we got yesterday were for the 15th. I'm not sure what the date was for the ones today, but yeah.
Today's
So
date.
that's 8 days. Yeah, that's the best
excellent.
it's ever been.
Yeah, as opposed to Ontario, that's 2 years behind. 2 years.
Yeah, yeah. Quite often, it's minimum 6 months, and there's lots of people. Landlords sleeping in their car because they have to sell their own house, and they can't get rid of the rental, and they can't get rid of the tenant, and it's bankrupted them. Yes, I read stories about that.
Yeah, there was an article actually in the CBC today about a couple who were living in a basement because they couldn't get rid of their tenant.
Well, that makes me so sad. These are people who've worked hard their whole lives to have something that can hopefully be an investment for them for the future and for their legacy, for their family, and now they're bankrupting them. It just makes me very sad.
Yeah, it's against. It's not even socialism; it's just plain stupidity. Yeah. The orders that come out of the RTDRS are as equally binding as the provincial court, at least. And we use it because it's the least expensive and usually the quickest, especially now. And we can apply online, and the hearings are held by telephone conference. So this is it was started before COVID, but COVID really pushed it along, and so there's been a couple of gifts from COVID that have helped us. So you can also go to provincial court. Some people like that. It's a higher court. You can apply online there as well. It's a little longer process, a little more expensive. And now Court of King's Bench, because the Queen passed, and so all our orders that we get from the RTDRS need to be filed with King's Bench, and it is Alberta's highest court for especially for what we do.
So do you have to choose one or the other? Could you do all three, or do you just
No,
for somebody who's just saying which one should I go to that's the most thorough or the quickest or whatever?
Just one. When you apply, I'm sorry, say again.
You just froze. I said, which one would you choose if you had no idea what the difference was between the three of them? What would you do?
Well, RTDRS, because it clearly says that it's just for landlords and tenants, so that makes perfect sense to me anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So here's some problems that can happen in an apartment building. It's a little noisy, so he's going to go.
And we'll give those people hell.
Yeah.
Already.
The devil's there already. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then on the one on the right, I get a kick out of that's and this is quite typical, where the lady is more responsible and says, hey, I need money, and he's saying, well, I want to have the nicest car in the area. So yeah, that's quite common. So the application and summary of the notice of hearing. The application needs to have focus, flow, and organization. And that's the best way I can put it. And a method to find particular pages rapidly when you're in the hearing. So you have two chances to shine your side, and one is in the application itself, and in the other when you're at the hearing. So to me, the you need to be organized, have things in a manner that flows and brings focus to the what you want the judge or adjudicator to know, to see, to understand. So each hearing package has a cover sheet. When you apply to the RTDRS, they'll send you back a cover sheet with some paraphernalia of theirs behind everybody's rights. And on the cover sheet is the hearing date and time, and notice to the tenant or the respondent as to what's happening and what could happen if they ignore it. So that goes on top, and then you apply. When you apply, you fill out a form online, and then they send the application back to you in another form. It's different than what you submitted it in, but that goes next. And then after that is all the evidence that you submitted to the RTDRS when you applied. So if you have extra evidence or more evidence comes up, which happens from time to time, before the hearing, you can add it. You got to send it to the tenant at the same time, and it's all got to be done minimum 24 hours before the hearing, and that 24 hours is meant to be one business day, so weekends don't count. And then each registered tenant gets a package. So if you got 5 people living in there, you gotta serve 5 copies when you serve it. So we'll get into.
So this is quite the process. This is not, just do this, file that, off you go. I mean, this is you've already just gone through 2 pages.
Can I ask a quick one? What happens?
Absolutely.
So you've got 5 tenants. Maybe one of the tenants is out of town or something, and you can't specifically serve that person.
That's fine. For the for this part, for the eviction side, you can serve all copies to one of the registered, or we'll get into serving in a minute here.
Okay.
But yeah, you can give them all to one on this. When you get to a damage claim, which we're not even talking about tonight, or basically not talking about tonight, though that when you do that, you have to give a copy physically to each one, each person that's on the lease. So here's what happens when a tenant buys a house.
Oh
There's
no! What are we
nobody
gonna do?
to pay for fixing. Yeah, imagine that.
Yeah, like when I bought my first house, I used to think $500 was a lot of money to spend on something, and
Yeah.
then after you get a house, when you have repairs, I remember being ecstatic because my garage door wouldn't open, and it only cost me $500, and I was so happy. I was like,
Yeah,
$500 is chump change when you own a house.
that's right. Yeah, your roof for now is 8 or 9,000. It's yeah, everything costs more. That's for sure. So to serve the package to the tenants so that they know that there's a hearing and what's it about. So you hand delivered is preferred. Then there's no comeback. Oh, I didn't get it, or that sort of thing. If you try to deliver it and when there's nobody there, won't answer, you got to try several times. It's a requirement, and you keep track of those times on your. You can use the form that they give it to you, the declaration, and those different or several attempts that need to be on different days and times. And as I say, they record it. Now, if you happen to go 2 or 3 times and then all of a sudden, the daughter that's over 18 answers the door, and her parents aren't here, and you suspect that they're in the front room being really quiet, you can serve that person as long as they're over 18 and they live there. You need their name, of course.
What happens if you don't serve them? Can you still take them to court, or that you can't serve them?
When you can't serve them, well, that's next year. If you attempt several times and they're avoiding you, or you just can't catch them at home, you can post it to the door, and it's got to be the door that they're most likely to use. So often in the house, that's the back door, the garage door, that sort of thing, from the garage door type of thing.
So when we did that, we would take a picture with our camera or with our phone and use that as evidence that we'd actually put the document on the door. So we tried to have some kind of identifying characteristic on the door so that they couldn't say, well, it's just any door anywhere.
And we date and time stamped it.
Yeah. I mean, when you fill out the declaration, that's you swearing that I did it in this manner. So
there's another trick I wanted to share, because I've done this before where I've had to serve people. And one time I was serving someone who worked at a car dealership. So I got a friend of mine to book an appointment with this person at the car dealership that they worked at. And so then my friend delivered the document and she said, "What is this?" And she said, "You'll know when you've opened it, you've been served." So that was one way that I did it. So I didn't actually do it because I knew if I went, she'd probably go scurrying off to the office. And then we had another person we were serving who worked in the real estate industry. So we had a friend of ours who was looking for a condo, phone this guy and ask if he could see a condo. And so this guy said, sure. So then our friend brought the papers with him, and he served the guy. And then the guy got the papers and he looked at them and he said, oh, okay, like this was no big deal for him. I guess he must get served all the time. And he's like, do you still want to look at a condo? Tells us this. And I'm like, good God, that guy's indestructible. Just didn't bother him at all. Didn't miss a step.
Yeah. Well, gotta give him credit, I guess. Professional.
Yes, but I was going to say, you don't always have to. You see creative things on TV where people are, coming with a coffee and they trip. The other person goes to help them and they see been served. So I started thinking creatively when I was doing that as well, because I thought if they see me coming, they're going to run off the other direction. So how can I serve them the first time? So that's what I did. Those are my tricks. Now you know them.
Yeah. Well, we've done various things over the years. I've had one I served right at the RTDRS. I was going out the door with her package under my arm, and here she's coming in. She's going to file against the landlord. So I served her right there on the steps. That was
You saved me some work. Thank you.
yeah. Thanks for coming by. And we've done all kinds of things. I've served people at work and at different. I've had a couple that went to the that were placed in. What's the right word for it nowadays? The loony bin, I used to call it. At the hospital, they were taken out of their house, and I've served them in the hospital.
Oh, well.
I had a friend with me one time. He was thinking that maybe he'd come and work for me part time and doing some serving, and I took him to I think it was the Grey Nuns, and there was the fellow was in there. And he just, when he realized that we're going to serve this guy in the hospital, he turned completely white and wouldn't go in. And I went in. I mean, I got this job, and he followed me. And then he was peeking around the door while I was in. They had to go get him. He was in the games room or whatever. And this guy comes, and I served him right in the middle with all the nurses watching. And so yeah, he I don't know what he thought, that this guy would go nuts or what.
But he was pretty scared. That's what your friend.
He was scared, yeah, and then just so that kind of ended his
career before it started.
Yeah. So one of the things that COVID brought us is the ability to email the package. You need to have proof that you had correspondence through that email with the tenant beforehand, so you can have that in the package, and so then you can email it to them, and you need to have proof that they opened it. So we have a program that we pay for monthly that it tells us every time that package is opened. And we've had some that were opened 8 or 9 times in one day or more. And we have 2 pages full of openings in 3 or 4 days. But that proves it. For the person at home doing one of these, most email programs have the ability to do a open receipt. And you need to open that and click that on so that they can click that they opened it, or it comes through that they opened it, and that's what you need to prove that they got it. And with any of those, you still have to fill out the declaration of service, and then you file that with the RTDRS afterwards. So it used to be an affidavit, now it's a declaration, so it's don't have to go find the Commissioner Wolf's. And here's some tenants that have problems with
That's such a cute little dog.
yeah.
Oh, I didn't know it was a dog.
No plants in this apartment. No plants.
I like the other one. Yeah, he dumped me, so I'm dating his landlord. We increased the rent tomorrow. There's justice for you.
Sweet. Yeah.
So now you're going to attend the hearing. Currently, the RTDS hearings are by teleconference. You've submitted all your evidence right at the beginning, and everybody's got everything. Then the RTDRS adjudicator calls the applicant first, which is usually us, and then if I have an owner that wants to be part of it, then they call the owner at that point, and then call the tenants, and then the adjudicator explains the process, the rules. One of the big rules is that only one person speaks at a time. That can be extremely difficult for some people.
Yeah.
So the claimant goes first. Explain why you're there. So that this is one of the reasons or one of the benefits of when you do your application, you do it in a clear, concise way. You can use that now to highlight the evidence. So you might send in, I don't know, 30 pages of evidence, for an example, and out of that, you may only highlight 5 or 6 or 10 pages, and you don't need it all. And then at the end of that, you ask for your desired income, your decided outcome. You want your income too. Any rate, if you want possession, you tell the adjudicator, we're looking for possession as soon as possible. I'll make it specific dates or how many days from service of the filed order or whatever as part of my presentation, but it's important that the adjudicator knows what you want. If, you want to work with them, and so you want a conditional order, and you'll say to them, I want to be able to make a plan with these people, and they're good otherwise, or whatever, and then the judge knows where to go from there, the adjudicator. Then the respondent states their side. They may have had evidence they sent in and want to show that. Then there's rebuttals that may occur from both sides. Then the adjudicator makes a decision. Once they have all the evidence that he feels that he needs, then you make a decision and issues a court order and a judgment. And when you're one tip I could add or should add is that when you do your application, you need to have a laser point. You need to keep it, use the KISS syndrome, keep it simple. Sometimes there's a bunch of things happening, but they owe you a fair amount of money. So if you just stick on the money, then if the tenant wants to bring up a bunch of items other than money, you're a rotten landlord and you're not fixing anything, and there's mice everywhere and the roof's falling in and yada yada, the judge will listen to that, but that's not what we're here for. We're here because rent's not paid. And so you'll tell the other side, if you feel that you have a case, then certainly apply to the RTDRS for your own. But we're here today because you didn't pay the rent, and it clearly shows that you didn't pay the rent. So
so stick to the topic. Make sure that you stick to the topic, and that it's probably a good idea for people to rehearse. I know every time I've gone to court, I've rehearsed. I've really prepared well in advance, just so that I was very clear in my own mind what I wanted to say, how I was going to say it, and I didn't ramble, because these guys are listening to court cases all day long, and if you start rambling,
it shuts you down.
You have to present yourself as someone who's credible and organized.
Yes, and this level of court is they're going to make a decision based on the probability of the who's right, which side is probably telling the closest thing to the truth, where the truth lies.
Yeah.
And so if you present yourself well, you speak well, you're concise, you're going to make a bigger impression than somebody that's going on and throws in a few swear words and
raving lunatic. As much as you might feel that way, rein it in.
I find too that when I'm in the hearing, I'll put my phone on mute, because sometimes the other side will say something so stupid and it comes out of my mouth, and nobody can hear me if it's on mute. So
there you go.
Yeah. So if you don't like where you are, move. You're not a tree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. And here's
Andy Cap.
Yeah, Andy Cap and why they can't pay the rent.
Yeah.
I like that one.
Yeah, I really like that one. I had to have it in there. There we go. So now you've got a court order. and a judgment. They come on the same paper. The court order is involving eviction. Judgment is for money. So now you file it at King's Bench. It becomes an official document at that point, and then it needs to be served to respondent. So currently, RTDRS will file it for you. They send it electronically over to King's Bench, and then they do their thing and send it back to the RTDRS, and then the RTDRS sends back to you. And right now, Edmonton is doing really well. We're getting them back same day or sometimes the next morning.
Well,
if it's an afternoon hearing. There's other places. I understand Calgary is it can be up to 10 days. So I think it's a what do you call them, a staffing problem. So then when you serve, now you're serving on King's Bench rules, not RTDRS rules. The first time around it was RTDRS. So King's Bench rules are that you need to attempt once and then you can post it to the door. But you have to fill out an affidavit, whichever way you served it to them. And so you gotta, you fill it out, ask for it. The thing to remember is to ask for it in advance, or you can get it online. They don't like the one that you get when you go to file. They don't like the one that is online. Number 49 is the right one, but they've got a different version of that. So you need to get a copy of the King's Bench version and the filing version, and fill that in. It's got a second page where it lists the various ways you can file, and you choose the right one and fill in the information.
I'm just going to stop you and ask you a question, Don. Is this information, if somebody wasn't watching our presentation, if they just wanted to do this on their own, is all this information that you're giving us, is this in some sort of a brochure with the Court of King's Bench or with RTDRS, all the steps that they go through, or would they just have to talk to somebody like you who's gone through it to know what to do? Because I mean, the
RTDRS is good. They have a fair amount of information for their service. King's Bench is a little different. They expect you to know. It's kind of like, the ignorance of the law is no excuse. So they kind of expect you to know. The people at the wickets are good, though. They I haven't seen. Well, maybe there's a couple that were kind of cantankerous, but usually they recognize when you're like they've never seen you before or whatever, and you're hesitant and all that kind of stuff. They'll help you out. They'll say, do you have a list of bailiffs? And we'll give you a list of bailiffs. So here's the form you need, and that sort of thing. So they're good that way, but it certainly takes longer when you don't know what you're doing. I mean, you go to the file and then you ask. I mean, if you don't have a copy, the right copy, or you brought the wrong copy, they'll say, here's the right copy. Go over there and fill it out, and then you don't have to come back in line. You just stand over here, and I'll get to you after finished wherever. And they're good that way, but it takes time and it's frustrating. I know, because I went through it when I first started. So then, so you got it all filed and completed, and so now you serve it to the tenant, or you've served it to the tenant, and the tenant knows they're supposed to leave on this particular date, for an example. And you come by on that date. You're supposed to be out at noon. You get there, and they're sitting there drinking beer with their feet up, and they tell you to go to hell. Hell no, I won't go. So now you need a bailiff. So the bailiff requires the copy of the court order and a copy of the filed affidavit of service. so they know that there is a court order and that the tenant got it. So then once you send that to them, then they'll come out and enforce that court order. So at the same time, the locks have to be changed or rekeyed. That certainly helps keep all the honest people out. And they do it at the same time as when the bailiff's there, and then they have to make arrangements to come back and pick up their stuff, one shot. And by this time, when the bailiff's there, it's kind of like everybody knows it's the ending. You don't get. I very, very seldom have I seen anybody be really aggressive at that point. I mean, some are to start with, but by the time you got through the bailiff has straightened them out, they're compliant. And
Are bailiffs usually big guys?
No. In fact, there's a couple of ladies. Well, there's 3 ladies. One's quite slim, a younger girl, and she does well. There's one of the fellows. I think he's one of the longest serving bailiffs. That certainly with Servant anyway. That's who I use. He's been there 20 some years, I think, or 30 years. Anyway. 30 years, I think, and he's like 5'6", maybe 130 pounds.
We're not talking big people here.
No, there are some big guys, and certainly the one I use is a lady. She's done this for about 25 years. She's so nice and gentle and everything until she gets to the door and she takes out her badge, and it's just like she changes. And she goes in, she takes control, goes in and directs everybody and gets the show on the road and answers the questions and handles, sometimes usually women get belligerent more so than men. I mean, some men do too, but she handles all that. And then as soon as it's over, she's back to being a nice, kind, gentle soul.
Good for her.
Yeah, I love her. She's a great person to work with. So anyway, they got to come back one chance to get their stuff, and so how it's put to them is that they need to get people and trucks and boxes and bags and pizza or whatever they need in order to facilitate the movement all in one time. So if you usually allow 8 hours for like a 3-bedroom house. Type of thing, maybe 3 or 4 hours for a 1-bedroom apartment type of thing. So it's on the judgment. If they won't or decide that they can't get their stuff, the rule of thumb is it has to today's value of the goods inside that house has got to be $2,000 or more before any action is taken. If it's under $2,000, then if it's left behind, it can be hauled to the dump or sold or burnt or whatever. And the bailiffs keep up on that. You got to think auction sale price, garage sale, Kijiji sale type of pricing. So nobody wants beds, mattresses, box springs because of bugs. Same thing with couches unless they're leather. So, I mean, there's got to be something really big. In all the ones I've done, there's only been a couple that, maybe 4, I guess, that had items that totaled more than $2,000. And in the one, there was a couple who really felt that they were mistreated. And so they bucked everything all along the line. And the owner ended up, you have to go to court to get permission. You got to itemize everything. And then you got to go to court and get permission to deal with that, and he did all that, and he he sold everything off, and there was more that they owed him a lot of money, but there was a couple of vehicles that I think there was a truck that was worth was sold something like $15,000 or something.
Oh wow! So it was property that was on the property, not
Yeah.
parked in front of the street. It was on the property.
Yeah, it was exactly right. It's in the garage and the back and all that stuff. So he ended up after all his expenses, he gave him he still got some money back. So, but that took the most part of a year.
Oh well.
And but most of the time it's nothing. I had one lady who I don't know what she did for a living, but she had her extra large king size bed, king extra, or whatever it's called, in the front room, and she had cameras all around.
Okay.
And she had
Sometimes.
yeah, and she had two kayaks sitting in the hallway, and some really expensive stuff. She had a bow and arrow set, and I knew it was in excess of $4,000 because I was just my uncle had just bought one, and I had spent some time with him going over choosing which one. So I could tell from what it was that this was a very expensive bow and arrow set. It was for hunting with the pulleys and all that. Anyway, yeah, that one. And the owner was a dentist, and he said, "Well, you got to put this stuff in storage." And he says, "Well, can't I just leave it in the apartment?" So he didn't care. He didn't need the money. So he kept it. And she came back and got it, I think, before the 30 days was up. So you got to keep it for 30 days, and then you can sell it or whatever. So
And all the videos.
I don't know if there was videos or not. We never looked. But
Yeah.
It was quite a sight. That was for sure.
Yeah, sounds like really something. Okay,
Yeah.
so we got through that.
Yeah. So
Knock them out.
yeah, no, you got them out. So they're here. They're evicted. You have success.
Yes. So yeah, I wanted to mention something about I used to work at a hotel at one point, in a restaurant, and in my youth, and sometimes you'd have people in there who were drunk and belligerent, and you'd have to call security. And the drunk people, when we called security, were always expecting some big guy, and depending on who was on shift at that time, could be a woman or a man or whoever was the night staff. But what always used to surprise me was when the woman came out, because she was a well-dressed, professional-looking woman, not a big woman, and she would shake their hand, introduce herself, and you could see the look on their face, even though they were drunk. They were like, what? They just were not expecting a woman. They weren't expecting someone professional to shake their hand and introduce herself to them and to talk rationally and say, we got a bit of a situation, but I think we can work this out. And she talked them out. They were expecting to fight somebody, and it just totally threw them off their game when she showed up in a suit, with their nails done and makeup on. I used to get a real kick out of that.
I had a big guy one time. He was going to lay a licking on me, and I says, "Listen, you better be careful because I'll phone my wife."
Good for you. So, Gil, you were going to ask Don questions about some happy stories, weren't you? Because we always think evictions is a really bad thing, but
oh yeah, no,
yeah.
it's,
so, Gil, why don't you ask your question that you wanted to ask?
Well, the first question I had actually wasn't about a happy eviction, but I sort of have a couple of questions around doing it yourself versus hiring someone. Because, and my first question was going to be, have you ever been hired by someone who'd failed at trying to do an eviction themselves?
Oh yes. I've had a number of times I've had where they come right up to the end and got cold feet because they were going to go into court. They've never been into court before, and I get to call at the last minute to bail them out and represent them. So, but yeah, I've had several that said, I've gone to RTDRS and they're stupid and they didn't rule in my favor, and it was clear to me that they should have, and I don't want to do do that anymore with them, and so I'll hire you to do it. So yeah.
Yeah. So it seems to me, and this is sort of a plug for your business, but if as a landlord you aren't adept at following the process, it can cost you several weeks of lost income because you're not following the steps correctly in order to get a tenant. Whereas if you go to a professional, it'll get done in the fastest manner possible, and you'll be back to collecting an income much quicker on the property that you've got your money in.
Well, I like to think so, for sure. It certainly makes a difference when you go in with a strength. I'm going to tell you, if you don't have a case, I'm going to tell you, I don't want your money and lose. I want to have a good reputation. So I'll tell you if you don't have a case, or what we need to do to make it a better case.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly, it all depends on the individual. Some people just don't want to spend the money, or they don't want to. They don't want to lose control. They want control over everything, and that's fine. I mean, that's the way you are. That's where you are. Um, but certainly hiring somebody. I mean, you get to a point where you don't have the time. Even I used to do all my plumbing work, all my repair work. I did everything. I even shingled or whatever I had to do when I first started out. But as time goes on, you get busier and you get more on your plate, and so some of these tasks it just makes more sense to hire somebody to do it.
Yeah, but you get more value for your money if you're offloading some of that stuff and working on the things that really make you your income.
Yeah, like if
That's right.
if you're in a professional position and you have rental properties and you're making $500 a day and you're losing 10 days of work, is it really worth it to you when you could pay an eviction service, pay them, I don't know, $500 to $800, depending on how complicated your case is. Just have them take care of it from beginning to end and represent you and have it over and done with.
And your point too of offloading the stress, if you're not into confrontation and that sort of thing, maybe you're just not cut out for evicting people.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's the other thing too, because Don, I've talked to Don about this before, and he's talked about how it's nice to have someone who doesn't have skin in the game. Like if I have issues with my tenants, and I've tried talking it through, and then they start getting belligerent with me, then I'm kind of, I'm in
it's personal.
It's personal, and I'm in a state when every time the phone rings, it's them. I'm like, So if you have someone who's got, they've had nothing to do with you, nothing to do with the tenant, and they just come in and they just want a resolution, they want to get things done, there's a much better chance of getting a better outcome where everyone's working together rather than two people who are at loggerheads with each other. So Don, I know you have some positive stories, and I wanted you to share at least, one of them, because we always think of evictions as being something negative, but actually this turned around when I've talked to Don in the past, and he said, no, sometimes it's a catalyst for good things to happen to people. So
yes, I mean, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So this way, or we can move in a different direction. When I had the property management company, I often run into, we rent to a couple, and they'd have a fight, and they'd break up, and either the girl or the guy, most often it was the girl, all of a sudden is in a situation where they don't understand, they don't know what's going on, they're trying to grease the squeakiest wheel, and they're often the other partner did all the
like the
financial work, and so I would go and serve them, and they realized at that point when I'm serving them that they are going to have a good chance of losing the roof over their head. And I mean, you got nothing if you haven't got a roof over your head. It's hard to have a shower in your car. And so when I could see that they realized that, or whatever signs they showed, I would talk to them. It would be either over their kitchen table or over the phone, and we'd have a conversation, and I'd ask them, I tell them that, there's always a way of handling these things, and there's a way out. Let's talk about your finances, and where's your money come from, and how much actual cash does it hit your bank account, and yada yada, and so we go through it all, and go through their expenses, and they all of a sudden the light would come on that if they change certain things that we could work out a deal where they could pay the rent on time, and then we could all these arrears we put over time. I had one lady who when we went through her finances, she confessed that she liked to have 4 or 5 lattes every day, and at that point I think they're like $5 or something. I think they're $10 now. But it dawned on her. I have kind of poked at her a bit, but it dawned on her that if she rewarded herself with 1 latte on Saturday rather than 4 or 5 a day, that she could end up with enough money to pay the arrears over time. Just and still be able to buy her underwear and food and look after her kids. And which I always, people would jump and say, oh yes, I can pay this much money, and in reality they can't, because they need to get to work, and they need to eat, and if they got kids, they got to feed them, and they got to buy them clothes, and they got to buy themselves underwear once in a while, and so you got to count for all of that before you can say I can pay this much money. As much as the landlord wants every penny you can get, you've got to think longer term, and so I know that, and I've talked with some of the ones that over the years they phone me and tell me, the milestones that they've had in their life now. The kids are gone, and they bought a car, and it's all because they were open enough to talk to me. And I could get them going in the direction to pay off their bills.
Well, you sat down with them, you problem solved with them, and then
listen.
I think sometimes when people are they're in a panic mode, they can't think straight, and maybe they've never done any budgeting, or they don't understand budgeting,
And you're also not being an enemy at that point, which is important.
Oh,
yeah,
that's right. And I'm the middle guy.
Yeah.
And I can sit and listen. And I had when we used to go to the RTDRS when we were downtown, and you had to go to the hearings there. Quite often we would come out of the hearings, and we'd shake hands out in the lobby, and reiterate who had to do what and that sort of thing. And there's one lady I used to see there all the time. She had quite a few houses, and she said to me one day, she says, I don't understand how you do that. You come out and your guys are friendly. She says, when I come out of the hearings, I'm ready to choke the assholes, and they're hollering at me. She says, I don't understand how you do it. Said, well, I've got no skin in the game, and I listen.
And you're trying to work it out. You're trying to work out a solution. So I actually really appreciate what you're doing, because you're helping people with their life skills. And you've also mentioned, and I've seen this again too, relationships break up, where someone's in an abusive relationship, they can't pay their rent. You went in and you talk to the person, realize that maybe that wasn't the apartment they should be living in, they should be living someplace cheaper, and then they realized they should get out of the relationship, and then their whole life went in a different direction, in a much better direction. So, and that was just because they were going to be evicted. So it kind of, that was that one sort of incident that was a catalyst for change in their life that brought on positive change.
So everybody wins.
Yeah, so everybody won. So it's not always a bad thing. Eviction is not always a bad thing. It's very stressful.
I think most of the time it's a good thing, because people get caught in and that's some of the things we discussed in the hearings. Is people fall on hard times. They lost their job, got hurt, or whatever, and they don't have as much money coming in. And excuse me. don't have as much money coming in, and it's really hard to change your lifestyle. Some people can do it just like that, but most of us, we don't want to change things, and we got to think about it, and it's all overwhelming, and so you're doing the same thing over again. You're spending the money that you don't have,
Yeah.
and so. That I've had many of them come out of the hearing, and they'd say thank you for giving me a way out, and that's what it was. So they moved on to another. They were able to straighten out their finances. They had this huge debt of rent. To them, huge. Maybe it wasn't that big, but to them it was huge, and they got it deferred, and they're able to move forward and get themselves established. And I've had landlords call me and say, the guy paid. I never expected him to pay. He paid. And I've had different ones, even my own units, where they phoned me and offered to pay. Especially the ones that were, maybe they were into drugs and stuff, and they get rehabbed. And I've had a number of them, 3 or 4 at least, anyway, that have they called me and they say we have to make restitution, and how much do I owe you?
Mm-hmm.
And we'll make a deal. One guy owed me, I think, $2,000, and he says, all I have is $1,000. Will you take that? And I said, absolutely.
Well, that's very nice. Yeah, very nice of him and very nice of you.
Well,
Probably $1,000. It's probably $1,000 you never thought you'd see anyway.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you're both happy. So that's great. So Don, if people want to get in touch with you, how do they get in touch with you?
Through you can check out my website, EdmontonEvictionServices.com. You can email me at don@EdmontonEvictionServices.com, or you can call me at my phone. I have my cell phone, 780-974-8427. It's on pretty much all the time. So, yeah, I like to talk to people, I like to help people. So
that's great. I'm glad to hear that. Those are kind of heartwarming stories, because you always think of someone with an eviction service as some big mean guy with a dog.
Yeah.
but not someone who's like, let's work it out, let's talk it out. Tell me what's going on with you. What's happening here? What would be a good solution for you? Let's figure it out. So I'm very glad to hear that. That's very heartwarming.
Yeah, and I'm going to say at least 80% of the people I come up with are willing to talk. There's always that group that are belligerent and they're just mad. They need anger management, or they need to slow down and take a look at what's happening around them. Yeah, they're hard done by. A lot of them, I think, are what's the right word? The right word's escaping me, but
entitlement.
Well, there's entitlement. That's more so in the younger generation now. The 20s, 30s, late 20s, early 20s, that sort of thing. No, they don't believe in themselves. They don't have confidence. Wow. Yeah, and so they lash out.
Okay. Well, that's a way of looking at it too that I hadn't a perspective I hadn't considered. So that's good to hear. But we're getting to the end of our hour. In fact, we're past the end of our hour. So we know how to get hold of Don, and Don's given us some really good tips, walked us through the processes. And I know there's one burning question I've saved to the end that I know that everybody's wondering. How can I get my hands on a copy of the Canadian Landlord's Handbook written by Nelda Schulte?
Yeah,
and
that's
happen to have a picture of one right here. Look at that.
Look at that. Yeah, it's upside down backwards.
It's backwards.
Amazon.ca, Nelda Schulte, and you can get your copy either $1.49 for the Kindle version or $18 for the hard copy. Nothing like a little shameless advertising at the end of my program.
And
So
I tell
thank you again, Don, for sharing. Thank you for warming the cockles of my heart, whatever a cockle is.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gil, for joining us. And thank you both for wearing those mega beards. I'm the only person without a beard here, feeling kind of naked, you know. I could put something on my face here.
Naked's fine. Yeah, naked's fine.
So
And I
remember
got to mention, I need to mention that I have a copy. I have 2 copies of your book. I'm going to give one away to somebody that's looking. So I might be hitting you up for another one.
Well, that's excellent, because Tom was one of the first people to ask me for a signed copy, and I was very happy to do that for him and ship it off. So yes, thank you very much, Don. And remember to like us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, like us on Twitter, and tell all your friends and family and colleagues, because there are a lot of people who need this information and they don't have to be struggling. There's lots of help through my website, neldaschulte.com, and lots of help through the videos and lots of help from our guests. So please utilize our skills and our information and have yourself a wonderful night. Thanks again, Don and Gil.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay,
Good to see
bye-bye.
you again.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye. There we go. You got quite the rugged look there.
It's been a few months. It's my sailing gear.
I was going to say you could be up in the north, and
They're actually going to get me to do Santa Claus this year.
good for you. Yeah, well, that's a good gig. That's a good gig.
It
For quite a few years, I did the Lions Club here in town. I was a member, and I did their Christmas as Santa Claus, and some of the wives would come in, and we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun. Yeah,
It is fun. It is fun. Okay, I'm going to head out and have some
Me
dinner.
too.
Have a great night, and it's great seeing you again.
Amen.
Bye.
Bye-bye.